Good afternoon and happy Friday the 13th. Even though it's spooky season, we're not trying to scare you. The reality is 1 out of every 4 interactions with your digital ads are likely fraudulent. The impact on marketing budgets over the next 5 years will likely exceed $180 billion, which is truly terrifying. This October Anura webinar is designed to help you figure out how you can filter out the noise from your digital marketing campaigns. We are joined by our panel of experts in the digital advertising space. Anura CEO and co-founder Rich Kahn is here. Garth Harris, VP of Product Innovation from Cake, and AtWave Managing Partner Jeff Fisher. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here.
Thank you.
Quick introduction of our panelists. For those of you who don't know, Rich Kahn has been at the vanguard of digital marketing for over 30 years. Rich has spent most of his career leading the fight against the ever-growing $100 billion ad fraud problem. He continues that fight today as CEO and co-founder of Anura. Thank you for joining us, Rich.
Thank you.
And we're joined by 2 panelists today, Garth Harris and Jeff Fisher. Garth is VP of Product Innovation at Cake, a trusted global provider of performance marketing software for over a decade. Cake empowers advertisers, networks, and publishers to manage, measure, and optimize their digital marketing campaigns in real time. Thank you for joining us today, Garth.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And Jeff Fisher is managing partner at AtWave. AtWave specializes in demand generation via their proprietary email advertising platform. They deploy dedicated email sends through their vetted network of partners to ensure you reach the right audience in the right format at the right time to drive maximum results. So thanks for joining us today, Jeff.
Thank you.
We'd love to hear from the attendees throughout this conversation. We've opened the Q&A section of the webinar. Please drop any questions you may have for panelists. And as always, we will provide a recording of this webinar to all the registrants within the next few days. So with that, Rich, can you kind of talk to us a little bit about the relationship you have today with Cake and AtWave, kind of how that works, how you guys came together for this webinar?
Cakes goes back a while. I guess we've been with Cake now 5 years, something to that effect. Started out, we had a few clients that were using Cake and wanted our technology to be part of the platform. Reached out to a couple people over there and were able to get everything put together. And we've been together since then. So what's nice about it is it just makes it easy for a client of Cake to be able to turn our technology on without having any tech resources. They've made it real simple. It's a couple check boxes, some flexibility on what they want to do based on our findings, and clients up and running. So they're up and running with literally in 60 seconds. Makes it real simple, which is great. And then AtWave, we started working with more recent. I guess they were looking for a solution to help filter out some of the noise that comes through email marketing. And I guess we went up against 1 or 2 of our competitors, and we won out for the win on that. And we've been working together ever since.
Excellent. And Garth, can you talk a little bit about what you and AtWave do and how you guys work together, and maybe how the Anura solution fits into that?
Yeah, so Jeff and I have been working together for, a little over 10 years now, Jeff.
Been it long?
I think so, dude. It's been a long time. So yeah, Jeff, as you guys heard in the introduction, Jeff runs an email marketing agency that is driving traffic from his partners to his advertiser brands, and he leverages Cake as a technology to do the attribution and measurement of those partners. So we're responsible for allocating cost and doing the real-time tracking analytics for his program. So yeah, Jeff and I have been partnering together for a very long time. It's been a good relationship.
And Jeff, how important is it for AtWave to understand, quantify, and fight against ad fraud?
Significantly, right? So I think obviously there's the big ad fraud elephant in the room, which I think is important for everyone to fight against. But we took it a step further, right? So it's not just about the blatant fraud. What we find in our channel, and I'm sure it's in a lot of channels as well, is the noise, the bots that maybe aren't malicious, but are just the bots on the web. And you tend to see a lot of this, especially with email these days, right? You set an appointment, right? And generally speaking, 20 to 30% of the traffic could be bots, or you hit a bot and you'll see 10,000 clicks come through really quickly. And so the problem with all that, right, is it creates a ton of noise in your data. So what's the real conversion rate? you don't really know, right? Is something actually performing? Is something not tracking? Or is it just a bot? And so we were spending so much time digging through manually into reports, just like filtering out and basically using human eyeballs to try to identify bot versus not, right? Which created a huge headache for us. And not enough times, I think, actually even lost us revenue, to be honest, because we throw off our advertiser stats as well, right? And then they got frustrated, and then they say, what's going on here? So Anura has been a huge help in making sure that our analytics are true, right? That we are driving true, unique individual users, and then be able to base our optimizations on that, and making sure that real users are actually going to our clients' websites and being registered in their analytics.
Excellent. Can we take a step back, Rich? I know that we're in this world a lot, talking about what ad fraud is, the technical nature of it. I know Jeff mentioned bots. Can you kind of give us an overview of the ad fraud problem and sort of how Anura fits into that?
Well, like I said, there's a lot of places that our technology fits into. It's not just eliminating ad fraud. Now, we go with the term ad fraud because that's the biggest, use case of our technology. But Jeff brought up a good point. Like, there are other uses. Like, you want to know what's clean, what's not. Like, it could be for email marketing, it could be for surveys, it could be for, logins into accounts. You want to make sure that they're not interfered with, because, there's probably at the end of the day more bot traffic than human traffic on the internet. And like I said, a lot of those bots are good bots. So you've got the Google bots out there doing their SEO crawls and making sure they've got all the site indexing done. There could be data retrieval bots out there pulling data from different things. But then you can have the malicious bots, or bots set up to be malicious, that might, scan a new site, for, say, Taylor Swift tickets, and identify as soon as those tickets are available, they buy them all up, and then they get sold, for a lot more on the back end. So bots can be used for a lot of different purposes. But when used bad, they can destroy data that you're looking at, and make you make good decisions based on bad data. They can do any kind of damage to your ad budget if it's coming in from an ad side. So you've got everything from bots, you've got malware that can do that. So software that gets installed on your device that can start controlling your machine and doing different things, making it look like they're taking advantage of your machine. Then you got human fraud farms. That's the more advanced level of fraud, where you've got these humans are sitting out. They used to be called click farms, but they're doing a lot more than click farms. So I started calling them human fraud farms. They're doing a lot more. They're filling out forms. They're using stolen credit cards. They're doing things to make it look like they're real people. And what does everybody use to stop that? They use CAPTCHA. So CAPTCHA is great for stopping bots, or used to be. I should say years ago it used to be good for stopping bots. I was like, I want to say I read a report from Harvard, I think in 2017, that technology has beaten CAPTCHAs like 97% of the time. And there was just an article, which is relevant, it just came out a couple weeks ago, that AI has now beat every CAPTCHA that's out in the market.
No way. Jeez.
Every type of CAPTCHA, puzzle, doesn't matter, it's beaten using AI. So now you don't technically need a human fraud farm to pass that CAPTCHA. You can do that through bots. Mm-hmm. So again, this is why CAPTCHAs are no longer, they were great, probably prior to 2015, they worked well. And just eliminating bots, but not the human side of things. That's why click farms, took off, years ago. But you need stronger technology now. You need something that's going to be better in your arsenal and defending against that type of fraud.
Absolutely. And I know you mentioned a little bit the email side of things, Jeff. Do you have any kind of specific real world examples of ad fraud incidents where you felt the impact, either on measuring a campaign or maybe having to go back to a client after the fact and talk them through it?
Yeah, I mean, I think Rich gave an example, like good bots versus bad bots. I think in email, a good bot, now a lot of emails use cybersecurity, right? To filter out the emails to see if they contain a virus. Well, that system creates an open and a click, right? So we pick that up as clicks, right? So some of the good things that we have to filter out because it's bad for us. Yeah, I got a really interesting story actually. So I was working with this advertiser, right? Brand new campaign. We get it launched, we drop it, and performance looks great, looks really good. And I get this really frantic call, right? And our client was really, really upset. And it was because he saw 10,000 clicks on his unsubscribed button in 10 days or in the same day. And it threw off his entire analytics. Like, I don't know what to do with this. How do I manage this, right? And he dropped me as a source right then and there, right? Materially probably had no effect on him, but just the anxiety of the bots that flooded his website, right? Caused him real pain, right? Some of the other issues that I worry about, especially maybe some smaller clients, or actually even some bigger clients that don't have as advanced maybe website infrastructure, is inadvertently launching a denial of service attack. Right, I've seen websites go down because the traffic was too high in a certain period of time, right? And sometimes you'll get on one of these bots, right, and it will just produce 10 clicks every second, and it slows up their website, which slows up their conversions. And I've actually seen some pretty big websites crash that way throughout my career, right? So totally inadvertent, right? Whether it was malicious or not, who knows at the end of the day, but I think those are some of the examples of like, hey, this is a bigger issue than just, causing some internal pain on the reporting.
Mm-hmm. And Garth, in your world, what are the most common types of ad fraud that you guys see for advertisers and publishers from Cake's perspective?
Yeah, I think a lot of what Rich and Jeff are saying, I mean, the bot traffic is going to be the most common because that's what you can actually physically see in the user agent. So within a platform like Cake, we're analyzing every single click. So we can actually see like where the user agent is and the bot, et cetera. So the bot really is probably the most common. I mean, at the end of the day, people like Jeff want to know, like, is there an actual human being on the other side of that click? And are they actually going to go buy the product that I'm advertising? That's the general concern. And so when it's bot traffic, which is probably the most common that most of our clients are experiencing, which can come in forms of different ways, right? Like the same exact IP address coming through, but bots are sophisticated. They're rotating through those types of things. So you need a lot more advanced technology, such as Anura, to actually identify that. But I think bot traffic is definitely the most cumbersome because not only is it just annoying, but like people like Jeff, they're not just partners to their advertisers, they're like stewards of their traffic. Like they're responsible for bringing quality traffic to their website. And if that is not clean, Jeff mentioned like the analytics go off. Like they want to make sure that like I have a good click to conversion ratio, a good earnings per click ratio, because that all funnels downstream. But yeah, I think bots probably the most common. The more sophisticated stuff that Rich has seen, where you actually have like human fraud, like clicking on the side, like that's beyond, like that's pretty crazy stuff. But the most common is definitely the bot traffic.
And Rich, when you talk to people about these types of fraud and incursions, I know we talk a lot about how it affects the ROI of their digital campaigns. Can you talk a little bit about why it's important to focus on that and how Anura helps to kind of displace some of that?
Yeah, so we always talk to clients, because the advanced fraud is going to make conversions, depending on what the conversion event is, whether it's a click to a landing page, whether it's a filling out a form, whether it's, making a purchase, they're going to try to mimic that because they want to make sure that their traffic source stays alive. Somewhere in that chain, they're going to get paid. Except, for a bad bot, if we're talking about the scanning bots, that's different, right? Those are technically good bots, but they're messing with your data because you're trying to look at certain data points. But those types of the ones that make it look like conversions taking place, then you start looking at your data, your sources of traffic, and you're like, wow, this source is converting well, let's spend more money there. And meanwhile, you're spending more money where there's bots. So behind the scenes, it starts lowering the ROI. And if you take a look at the average user, they're buying from multiple channels. Some are buying from affiliates, some are buying from different, like Google and programmatic and email marketing and different places, native. Each one of those channels has different ways of affecting a campaign. But like, I'll take affiliates, for example, because I know that's a hot topic. But affiliates come in, they're looking to get paid within 1 to 2 weeks. They got to get paid quick. And it's just, if you want to be competitive in the space and attract good top quality affiliates, you got to pay out quick. But, sometimes when you're following the money and chasing down chargebacks and chasing down, bad leads or bad transactions, it could take weeks or months to find that information out. And by then the affiliate's already been paid. And they know that, so they hang around, they spread, they do it a couple. It's kind of like, if you guys saw the movie Catch Me If You Can, where he was doing check fraud, right? He knew exactly how long he could hang out in the town before they caught on to him. And that's what affiliates do. They know how long they can hang out in a network before somebody catches on to them. And that's what you got to look for. You want to be able to identify that stuff right away so you can deal with it, clean your data, prevent them from filling out forms, prevent them from, credit card chargebacks, because chargebacks cost people money. And that's an important thing. You got to keep an eye on all that data. So again, it's a combination of things, and it depends on the type of campaign that's running. Will depend on what type of attack you're going to see.
And Jeff, you looked at other ad fraud solutions when you were considering this approach, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a techie at the end of the day, right? So I like to play around with the different platforms. I thought what separated Anura than some of the other ones that I looked at, and Rich kind of like harped on this earlier, right, is it's advanced over the course of the years. Like fraud, bots, right? Like they've all gotten so much more sophisticated. And I think when you look at folks who are in the ad fraud game, you see a lot of market leaders come and a lot of market leaders go. And I think maybe their algorithm a lot of times developed a product or algorithm that worked in that point of time, right? That we were on the internet, but then as stuff evolves, right? Maybe they don't keep up with it. And so, some other folks out there really put a really heavy reliance on IP score. And IP score was really, really important when you're talking about fraud back in the early days. Like that's how you would catch it. Oh, here's a fraudulent IP, right? Fast forward to today in the world of shared IP space, right? Like every IP is dirty, right? Like it's been passed around, right? So maybe some of their algorithms might be more heavily reliant on an old world. We're in a new world. Maybe you're going to get a lot of false positives. It's not going to be as sophisticated. So, the world has definitely gotten more sophisticated, right? The technology needs to keep up.
What kind of evaluation techniques did you go through to kind of understand which was going to be the best solution for you?
So what we did was I would take campaigns, right? And I took campaigns where I got large data sets of conversion sales that I knew 99% that like this was not fraud, right? Long-standing campaigns. I had the back-end numbers. I had good relationships with the advertisers. I saw how they would bake, the lifetime value would bake out over time. Like we confirmed that they were real people. And I took those conversion files, right? And I isolated the original clicks that they came from, right? And then scrub those clicks against individuals to see, hey, who's going to produce the most false positives, right? Assuming that at least they would pick up on the negatives, right? And I found Anura by far had the best rate. Generally speaking, 1%. I think the highest thing I did was just under 1.5 in terms of like a false positive, right? With them, but some other platforms I've saw up to 60% of my traffic that I knew was legitimate get flagged as fraud. So there was pretty big results in the data depending on the platform.
And Rich, I know you probably have a theory as to why that is. Do you want to talk a little bit about how your technology is different?
We could be here all day. Well, there's a couple of things that we look at, right? So I don't underestimate the fact of the industry standards, because a lot of times I'll talk to clients and I had one client hit me up and say, well, there's no industry standards of how you guys should work. So it's kind of like, hate to say it, but the Wild West. Like you can do anything you want and call yourself a fraud detection solution, which I've seen a number of products that do just that. And like I said, you're seeing, clients when they're testing it, seeing high false positive rates, like over 50%. So that actually costs you a lot of money if you actually believe in that technology. So we're a believer in following the industry standards, which were set by the MRC, and we're one of 8 companies that are certified to follow those standards. So we believe that's an important part, because their tests, it's kind of like you buy a new house and you get an inspector, and you're looking for things to find that need to be fixed or tell you don't buy this house. They're going through that stuff. So the inspections that we go through every year literally look at our code, look at our database, look at our logic, look at all kinds of stuff, and it has to meet certain criteria in order to get the sign of approval. So that's step one. Step two is, we're the fraud experts. I mean, I've been fighting fraud for more than 20 years now. When we built the system, we built it and we set it and we designed the rule sets and we put everything in place and we tell you what's fraud and what's not fraud. What you do with that's up to you, but we're going to tell you what's right. There are a lot of systems out in the marketplace that let you adjust the rules. Oh, you want to dial in some more fraud? You want to let some more in? Like, you have the ability to really adjust the thresholds of every rule in their system. And by doing that, that kind of puts you in the driver's seat of fraud. And meanwhile, you're paying a company to do that for you.
Yeah, Rich, that never actually, sorry to jump in. That never made any sense to me, right? It's either yes or no. Like, how could, it's a kind of, it's a dish, right? How does that work?
I've seen that. I've seen people mark it as bad-ish, or they have these weird terminologies, but they make you do it. And it's like, wait a second, what am I trying to figure out? I'm paying you to do this.
Right.
And so there's companies that do that. So the other thing that you'll see too is a lot of companies, they're going to return a numerical score, typically 0 to 100. And they're going to say, this visitor scored 70%, which is likely to be fraud. So go ahead and block it. But what about the other 30% that's likely to be real? Therein lies false positives. So we don't do that. So the way we work is very different. When we believe 100% confidence that that visitor is fake, that's the only time we mark it as fraud. And because of that, it leaves out the false positive rate. It eliminates that issue from happening. So we're focusing on that. And then even in that case where, our competitors are marking traffic at 70% or 80%, then they mark it as fraud. We're going into 100%. We're still finding more fraud than they do. Accurately, I should say. Because again, a lot of them out there their false positive rate is there for sales. They want to come in, they're going to run a test, they're going to say, hey, Jeff, we're going to run this test. And, hey, we found 60% fraud. You need us. And if Jeff didn't do his job by looking at the back end data and knowing his data set, he would have gone with a company that's going to find more fraud and he would have killed his business.
Yep.
And so that's why there's so many things, but like the heart of the system, you can have all these fancy tools and we have all that, we have the dashboard. It's really detailed and rich and all that stuff. And that's all great. The heart of the system is the accuracy and thoroughness. If you don't have those two, you don't belong in the space.
James, do you mind if I hop in and go off script a little bit and ask Jeff a question?
Totally.
Kind of a roundabout question. So with Cake, like, we're not the fraud experts. Like, we provide the tools for people like Jeff to track and measure his campaigns, but really, like, we're not experts in catching or preventing fraud, which is why we have to make a decision, like, do we build or partner? And that's why we made a decision to partner with Rich to integrate it into Cake. Before that, clients had the ability to kind of see, like, oh, like a lot of repeat IPs, like, that's probably suspect. I'm going to go in and block those IP addresses. And so we give you the tools to, like, identify bad traffic and then mark it as such and say, I don't want that anymore. But obviously fraud it's sophisticated and it's changing. And so you're playing that cat and mouse game, catch me if you can, right? Like, all day long. I guess the question for you, Jeff, is like, how has, like, your workflow or even the time you spend on this subject, how has that changed, like, since before that? Like, that was probably your workflow before versus, like, now after with Anura, like, plugged in. Has that been, like, a significant change in, like, how much time you have to spend thinking about it or actually acting on it?
Yeah, time just troubleshooting, right? Comfort in knowing what I'm looking at is accurate, right? Hey, did this offer not convert? Right? Hey, is there a problem here with the landing page? Oh, no, we hit a bot. That's the problem, right? And having that doubt, right? Every time you're trying to analyze something, right? I mean, it just creates a ton of legwork. And then it wasn't just for the individuals. Then it would cause across the company, right? Hey, this campaign didn't work. Well, did you check the clicks? It might have been bot. No, I checked the click. It was bot. Yeah, but I think it was bot, right? And now we got different within the company, debating over it. So just to be able to eliminate all doubt, right? Hey, this is clean traffic, right? Huge win. Yeah. And a lot of us focusing on what we need to do in terms of optimizing campaigns and driving more traffic to our clients' websites.
And I imagine, like, the relationship between you and your advertisers has gotten better because you're sending more quality traffic. Have you seen, like, an improvement in that relationship, or is it just kind of like?
Yeah, with any sort of performance marketing, right? we look like heroes, especially when we're able to call out issues, right? We're the first to notice if a client's website's down or if there's a technical issue, because we see that drop in the conversion rate, right? So now knowing that the stuff's accurate, and I see, hey, I'm running a campaign, it's always been between 4 and 5% conversion rate. Today it's at 0.5%. Hey, client, we got a problem with the landing page. What's going on right now? I just want to bring this to your attention, right? We look like rock stars, right? Before, we'd have to have the debate. Why is this something that we did, right? What's going on? Let's look at the data, right? Let's download Excel spreadsheets, right? And try to make assumptions. And we weren't really quite sure. So now having the confidence to go, and then even from a business standpoint, right? Being able to put our name and be proud of the traffic that we send, like knowing that it's as clean as it can be, right? And I think there's a big difference. I don't mean to go off topic on Google or any of these other, networks, but when you're in performance marketing, right? Like your incentive aligns with the advertiser, right? Like they're expecting some results and you need to drive that results to them, right? Fraud, especially in the display world, exists mainly on the ad network and the exchanges, right? And if you ever go to an exchange and you look under the hood, right, you can stare at it and be like, that's fraud, right? Like it's pretty blatant obvious from anybody internally working there. But if you're getting paid on a click or an impression, right, you don't really have an incentive to try to fight that extra 30, 40% fraud coming through your network that your clients are still paying on. So you pass it off to the clients, right? And so I think for us, being a performance business, trying to really be something that we can be proud of, put our name up on it, right? We want to deliver cleaner traffic than anybody else, right? And I think we're doing a hell of a job doing it.
So if you're the hero to your advertiser, like how does this impact your relationship with your partners on the other side of the fence, like your affiliates or your publishers? Has it like strained relationships because you're like finding that their traffic is more fraudulent, or is it actually allowing you to see like I should not have been working with you all along kind of a thing?
No, I think for anything, it's been I think it's been helpful, right? Because on the flip side, right, there's always, in terms of, at least if I'm referring specifically to email, right, there's always a huge discrepancy between the ESP click report and what we click in the click domain, right? Any sort of every time you go further up in the redirect funnel, you're going to see more clicks, and a lot of times just backfinger clicks and they don't make it all the way through, right? You see it on email a lot. They click on the email, they back away, right? Bot clicks on it, doesn't go all the way through, right? So typically, it wouldn't be surprising to me if we see a discrepancy between an ESP of 20 to 30%, right? But what's happened is now we're able to say, hey, and I actually like that we're using Anura, a third party, because we're able to tell our pubs, hey guys, here's a technology platform that we use, right? It's yes or no, right? It's not 70 or 30, right? It's yes or no. We explain this to our publishers, right? Use this as a source of truth, right? If they see a lot of bots coming in on their list that we're blocking out and they see that discrepancy widen, right? Maybe that's an opportunity for them to leverage some tactics to start cleaning up their list, right? Because bots are actually a really big thing with emailers as well, right? Because they go and they do a deployment, they're like, oh my God, my engagement's great. But if they're not real people, right? Mm-hmm. We especially see this in your big branded publications that might have big email lists that mail really heavily, right? But they don't necessarily have a real dedicated team of like really hygiening their data, right? That list is riddled with bot users, but the stats look great, right? So I think it actually helps us to provide and validate feedback to them about what's actually going on with their list.
Awesome.
Got it.
And we talked a little bit about CAPTCHA at the beginning of this. How important is the user experience? We know CAPTCHA can be super clunky and it's not always easy to use. Whereas Anura's, I think, is a little more seamless. So is that important when you guys are making a decision, both this, I guess, for Cake and AtWave? Is that important when you guys are considering how to integrate a solution like this? How important is that seamless user experience?
Pretty seamless. I mean, sometimes I find it hard to hit all the boxes with the fire hydrant in it. Like sometimes you're not quite sure if the lug nut is over in the next panel, right? Or is that a C or an A or a G? Like it fools me, right? No, I hate CAPTCHA.
Yeah, I think the seamlessness of I mean, I'd have to just, this is not my doing. This is all the engineers that actually have to do all the hard work to plug it in. But watching clients like Jeff be able to go from simply responding and reacting to advertisers and having those hard conversations to be able to say, like, what do you want to do with this traffic when we identify it as fraud? Like, giving a client the tools to be able to manage that is pretty fulfilling, in the sense of, like, Jeff can now just say, like, if it's fraud, like, don't even let it pass through. Like, we want to block it at the source and allow for that traffic to be clean on the other side of the fence. So the fact that it is just so easy to turn on and be able to manage. Jeff obviously works with a lot of emailers, so he just has direct relationships. But a lot of our clients, they have an affiliate, could just be another network that's working with a lot of other affiliates. And so it's not necessarily the network's fault that there's fraud traffic coming through. It could be one individual affiliate on the other side, the sub-publisher or the sub-affiliate. And so being able to have that granular control to be able to identify it at the source's source and then be able to turn it off without actually jeopardizing your relationships across the board, I think is pretty powerful. And that's just a testimony to, like, how the actual integration has gone so smoothly between the two companies. But yeah, seamless is definitely key here. It needs to be easy to use.
That's our number one concern when we bring on new clients. If they're not using a solution like a Cake and they have to do the integration themselves, we've tried to design it as simple as dropping a tag or some simple code. But, depending on the size of the client, it's, the smaller clients, okay, they may be tech resource, hinged. They don't have all the tech resources they need in-house. The bigger ones have a giant roadmap, and you got to find out what sprint you can get into. Where with Cake, literally, I think the documentation is, check this box, select these options, hit go, and you're done.
I think, Rich, we set it up on a sales call.
Yeah, it's that simple. It makes it, and that's what really for us is great, because somebody can literally check a box, turn it on, collect some data, find out how much fraud they're dealing with, so see how they want to analyze it, and then select the different options that Cake's got in there. Pay out, not pay out, send it, not send it, charge, not charge, like all the different options that you can think of that you would want to do with that traffic. And it's just a simple checkbox. So no code, just deploy, and which makes it simple.
So let's take a step back to that maybe publisher or advertiser that's just starting to go down this road of trying to understand if they need this solution. Obviously, Anura's free trial is a great way to find out. But there's also, I think, in the industry, in the fraud detection industry, Rich, there's some certifications that your solution and company hold. Can you talk a little bit about what those are and why they're important?
Yeah, we talked about the MRC standards that were set, and that's the certification that I'm referring to. I want to say it's about 10, 12 years ago, the MRC established a set of industry standards for fraud detection companies to follow. And every quarter they update those standards based on how fraud evolves, because fraud's obviously constantly evolving. We're seeing new threats on a weekly basis. So they have these set of standards set, and then there's two companies that will actually do a third-party audit and certify that you're following the standards. You can either go through MRC directly, which is the Media Rating Council, or you can go through the Trustworthy and Accountability Group, which is TAG. We chose TAG because they're international. They actually merged with another company internationally. We have international clients. They're also happy. They're also okay with the amount of data that we give out, because we give a lot of data in our dashboards, and some entities don't want you giving out so much data, but we don't believe in a black box approach. We want people to feel comfortable with what we're finding so that they can see what's actually going on. But that certification, like I said, is important, because following best practices, following industry standards, a lot of, depending on the industry you're in, if you're in the performance marketing industry, the government's coming up with industry standards, for lead generation and for different performance marketing agencies that they need to follow. And it's important to have some type of guidelines to follow. So for us, it was important to get that certification. We've also done SOC 2, just because, we have a lot of big clients that wonder how we're storing our data and the processes and stuff like that. So we got that done as well. But I think it's important to know that, because I'm a developer, or I used to be, years ago. I haven't developed in probably 5 years, but literally I can sit down, I can go home, and inside of a month release a fraud detection company. I can do a very, very basic one. But if I have a good pitch behind it, I can get clients behind it, right? So it doesn't mean it's a good one. I can't build something good in 30 days. But there are companies that are doing just that. They're putting together some bells and whistles, and they're putting together a great presentation pitch, and they sound like, best thing since sliced bread, and you sign up for it, and you realize if you're looking at the data, man, this really doesn't work, or this doesn't make sense. A perfect example, I had a client that was using one of these systems where you have little slide bars and you can adjust all the rule sets any which way you want. So he went in, turned them all the way down, ran Google through it, and got 3% fraud. And they turned them all the way up and got 97% fraud. And he's like, oh, I can't use Google. It's got 97% fraud. And I go, you're telling me how you just tested it. Does that even make sense? If Google had 97% fraud, they'd be out of business,
Probably more like 30%, but like, yeah, 90% way too high.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting how you look at this kind of stuff, and, and it's hard because, as a client, you're out there in the marketplace. So Jeff was in the marketplace looking for a solution, vetted us up against a couple solutions. And what is he getting? He's getting told what the salesperson's telling him, or at the end of the day, he's going to talk to a salesperson. Their job is to sell the product regardless of what the product does. So they're going to try to sell the strong points. They're going to try to oversell what they do there. But at the end of the day, what we look for is a client that looks at the back end data, that understands the reality of what's real and what's not real, because that one, we know head to head, we're going to win against any company in the market. We want to show people that it's the accuracy and thoroughness of the solution that really makes the solution. All the other stuff is bells and whistles, and we have a lot of that, like with our dashboard and the data and the exports and all kinds of stuff that you can use for that stuff. But really, when it comes down to it, is how accurate is that system? If it's not accurate, it's going to cost you more money than it's worth.
So Jeff and Garth, what advice do you have to companies that are just starting down this path to try and address fraud, maybe that they've detected or don't even know how to start to look?
From my perspective, especially if you're using a technology to actually track all of your engagements in real time, get a dashboard that allows you to actually analyze the click data, because the click data is something that's a very basic experience where you can actually see the IP addresses and the user agents, and you can just start to look. It's exploring your data is the first step into seeing like what's going on. And that's where we talk to a lot of clients around like, hey, like if you're getting a lot of like duplicate clicks from the exact same IP address, like it's something to raise your eyebrow about. It's not a guarantee that it's fraud, but it's something to allow you to kind of start to explore the data. And eventually you'll start to see rhythms and patterns and be like, okay, like I'm starting to kind of identify what this is. And if you actually have a traffic set that's actually starting to get a little bit more suspicious, that's when you would start to knock on the door of fraud prevention companies like Anura to be like, hey, like I think I need to take it up another level and actually start to prevent this because it's causing problems down the stream. But I think stepping into it is you need to be able to track it in real time so you can actually see it. Once you analyze it, that's when you start to go shopping, right? Like Jeff was operating for a long time without it, but now he probably wouldn't look back.
Right. I think for us, we always looked at when we're going through the easiest way for us to identify it, like off a quick read, was just filter by internet service providers, right? Are they coming from AT&T or are they coming from Microsoft? All right. If they're coming from an Amazon server in Virginia, probably not a real person, right? So just like a real high level screen, right? I think you filter out, you'll know if you go through your data, right? And be able to quantify, I think, just from having a good eyeball for things, as Garth said, the patterns, how big of a problem it really is. I think that's what's for us who are monitoring click traffic. I think for other folks who are running more affiliate programs, landing pages, credit card sales, right? They're going to have their own different challenges, right? That I'm sure that they'll see right away because they're actually dealing with the end client, right? So maybe they have a little bit of a different use case outside of just kind of looking at the click data. But that's how kind of we started looking at it, recognizing how big it was, recognizing how much noise it was making, and then we're like, all right, we need to figure out a solution here.
Yeah, we also noticed other clients are looking at the language of the user's device as well. So if they're clicking from a mobile phone, a lot of times that information is available to you. It's available to our clients as well. So they can actually filter, like you said, like you're looking at ISPs, but you're also looking at other things that are like a little off. Like if the language primarily is coming through as like Vietnamese, for example, and you're targeted on a US campaign, that may indicate something. It's not a guarantee, but it's an indication. So it's you start to learn these indicators that are probably pointing in that direction.
It's funny. I actually had a client that was doing app installs, and So they're using our technology, and we were catching like 90% of their traffic was fraudulent. And I was walking them through the dashboard data because we have all this unique data. And the one that popped up was the language of the browser. And 90%, which were the top 4 languages, were not even native to that country when they were running the traffic. And they're like, it was the first time that data was actually something that somebody queued in on and said, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Because they always try to help people like, 80% of it's fraud. Well, can you show me why? Like, can you find a pattern? Can you show me something?
Yeah.
Could be a browser version, could be, a city that it's coming from. It could, like you said, like Ashburn, Virginia. It could be, one of these other ones that are happening. And in this case, it was the first time I had it. Somebody said, oh my God, I recognize those languages are not natively spoken there. And it's 80 or 90% of the traffic. So
Yeah.
Yeah, all that data helps.
Well, we're coming up to the last quarter of the hour here. Is there anything else that Jeff or Garth, anything that you guys wanted to talk about related to Anura, or Rich, anything that you wanted to mention before we kind of wrap this up?
Let you guys go. Anything on your side?
Other than thanking Rich for wearing his skeleton shirt on Friday spooky season.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I'm always curious about where it's going. Like, how do we get better? Like, that's why I made up my title. It's not a commonly used title, but I like how do we get better, right? Like, I'm sure as Jeff continues to use the integration, as the internet continues to evolve and change, and browsers change and privacy laws change, like fraud's going to look different down the road. So as much as I am on this panel, I'm still very much a student and just eager to learn about how it's all changing and how we can continue to evolve the product to make sure that we're adding value to clients like Jeff, right? So yeah, it's nothing to solve here now, but I think that's just a worthy conversation to keep having.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you again to our panelists and to our audience for tuning in today. We appreciate Rich, Garth, and Jeff for this lively and informative conversation. We will follow up with the attendees with a recording of this session. There will be a quick survey as you exit. And if you'd like further information on the services provided by Anura, you can find Rich Kahn at unura.io. If you'd like to learn more about how Cake or AtWave can help you reach more consumers with better efficiency, you can find Cake at getcake.com and AtWave at atwave.com. Be sure to check out the events page at anura.io/events for more information on upcoming webinars. And of course, it's conference season, so appearances that Rich will be making. And thank you all again for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
James, thanks, guys.